All right. Hey, thanks for stopping by Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. As always, make sure you are subscribed. And if you are subscribed and you aren't getting notifications, but you're here because I told you I was doing this tonight, make sure you're checking out the bell icon. Uh, the people over at YouTube like to shadow unsubscribe and shadow ban people and even remove subs, especially when you have socially improper content. I'm learning that I'm going to have a very low social credit score to go along with my other credit score. So anyway, I am excited to have Kris. Well, most people know him as KDub True. If you see him on social media, especially at Twitter, I got his stuff down here for you to look at. He's also on YouTube. He's a rapper and a Christian, and he's a philosopher. So you go try and figure out how, like, don't ask him to rap about like Kant or anything because it'd just be really boring. But he's going to come on tonight and talk to us about the cliched topic of the day, critical race theory, and other issues surrounding the church and what is oftentimes referred to as Black culture. Now, if you're like me, it's hard to understand what people say or mean when they say Black culture these days. And I have Black friends who don't even understand what it means when people say Black culture, because within this amorphous Black subculture, there are other cultures, there are other subcultures. And oftentimes, people who tend to be critical and logical and thinking will frequently say, well, which Black culture? Whose Black culture? And that's one of the things that KDub talks about quite a bit. And he pushes back against the narrative that is all amorphous Black culture and the fact that if you're Black, you have to adhere and believe in certain things. And he catches a lot of flack for it. In fact, just last week, he had a tweet up that said, she thought I was Black or white. And then when he corrected her, she quickly changed her tune. And I'm going to have him tell us about that conversation when he comes in. We have been friends on Facebook for quite a while. He's intimidating to me because he's really sharp and he's quick. And that's intimidating to me because as I'm listening to people, I'm spending all of my time thinking about what I should be responding to. And normally at the thing I end up responding to, they said like 10 minutes earlier. So we're gonna bring KDub, we're gonna bring Kris in, and I would ask that you guys share this around because this is a really important conversation. If you go back to the one I had with Walter Hudson several months ago, another one of those pivotal, powerful conversations, I think this one is going to be enlightening for everybody, not just Black people or white people or BIPOCs or whatever. This is going to be a great conversation. And as a reminder, as we're getting ready to bring Kris in, make sure that you guys are checking out my video about my challenge for 22-0. We have two entities that are now how do I want to say this? We have two entities that are matching my commitment to give a portion of my proceeds to 22-0. And that is Juan from Right America Media, and then the company, this little privately owned independent merchandise company here in my region that makes my merchandise for me. They're going to match it up to $100 as well. So we have the potential to do a minimum of $300 if everybody would just reach out and find a way to either learn to like coffee or buy really interesting merchandise. So we're going to bring Kris in now, and I'm going to let him introduce himself because he can do it better than I can. Share, comment, like, and ask questions. And don't be afraid to ask hard questions because he can answer them. Kris, thank you so much for bearing with my really long introduction and self-promotion.
No, man, I understand the nature of it. Pleasure to be on talking with you, man. It's my honor.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. I was like, man, I want to have him on, but I'm like, I just almost didn't want to do the cliched, hey, here's an old white guy asking a young black guy to tell me how to feel about critical race theory. Because
well, I'm already viewed as a sellout anyway. So going on another white guy's podcast, the show, to talk about critical race theory and a lot of the social commentary, they can't say anything worse that's already haven't been said. So I'll take it.
Oh, so how old are you for the audience?
Yeah, I'm 31 years old.
Gosh,
yes, sir.
Feel so old every time I ask that question and somebody says they're under the age of 45. Hey, we got a gal somewhat local to me who said good evening, everyone. And I'm glad that she's tuned in, because I have been over in their school district with her and her husband and their group, trying to help them fight against a lot of the critical theory stuff in their school district to get the ball rolling for them. So
well,
Sarah,
hopefully this episode and this conversation will be helpful or encouraging to her. And I know a lot of people who face these things in their own community. I know the general consensus for a lot of people is this, like, what am I even seeing? What is this? They know it's wrong. Right. They just don't know how to articulate it, or obviously they're going to be called a racist and they don't want the pushback from critiquing it. And so hopefully I can provide just an encouragement for people who are in that kind of in those shoes.
Well, and I think it's, you look at, so you think about Vody and his book Fault Lines. I'm certain you've read it, or maybe not. Yes. I was certain you had. So yes. You probably have a signed copy. You run in those famous circles. So, but you look at people like Vody and yourself, and it's so easy for people to go, oh, well, we need to give credit. Well, let's think about it. I had a conversation with a reverend in our area. I'm trying to get him on. He was upset with me the other day because of the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill that was passed into law, and my response to that was why does the federal government need to pass an anti-lynching law when murder is already illegal in the entire country? And his response to that to me was, and I really do want to have him on because we agree on a lot of things, and there's some things we disagree about. And so Rev, if you're watching this, please take me up on my invite. I'd love to have you on one of my Monday night shows. This is TC and Friends Monday Night Musings 3.75, just so you know, because Kris had to back out on me on Monday, so he's got a job. But so Rev, I'd like to have you on to talk about this, but I'm looking at that, and his response to me was, well, it doesn't matter to you. You don't think it's necessary because it doesn't matter to you because, and the implication being that it doesn't matter to me because I'm white and my people don't get lynched. And I know that's what he meant, and I can understand that mindset, but it's just again, it's another layer of, well, for one, if you know anything about my channel, it's another layer of, yet again, the federal government stepping in and thinking they need to do something. And it's really what it is a bunch of white leftist and white Republican conservatives all virtue signaling how woke they are, that they're now passing an anti-lynching bill. Like, is this even an issue anymore?
Yeah, like, who's being lynched? Like, when was the last lynching, right? Like, why is that actually being, as if it's going on today? Why can't we actually address abortion, right? Well, there's so many issues that we could be addressing that are actually happening that are negatively affecting the Black community, if you want to even go from that perspective. But really what's problematic from your reverend friend is this idea he has bought in to some aspect of critical theory. And the aspect that he has bought into is standpoint epistemology. Now, standpoint epistemology says, right, that essentially, right, the experience dictates truth is based on a postmodern framework and things like that. But right, because he's black, he has this standpoint that you cannot see, right?
Right.
Also females, right? Females has a standpoint that males can't see. Males can't see the oppression that females are in. Therefore, they can't really speak to the issue of oppression of black people, right? Because you're white, you cannot speak to that issue. So really what you need to do is just be a listener. You need to be an advocate for black people if you really want to show how sincere you are. And I take great issue with that, really, as mainly as a Christian, right? My standpoint doesn't give me the truth on that, right? Ultimately, our truth is objective, not experiential. Now, we do experience the truth, but it's not based in experience. Right. And that's the issue with standpoint epistemology. It bases the truth on the one's experience. It's not reality based.
Well, so and here's another aspect of it too, is it puts people in a position, like you said at the beginning when you were coming on, about how I don't want to be called racist. And the sad thing about that is that if that's your retort to somebody who asks a question, or somebody who asserts, hey, look, this is not well, look at what the Southern Baptist Convention, did here. Was it 2019 when they passed their resolution where they kind of bonded all that stuff together at at the end of the convention, and there was a critical race theory is not biblical, but it's a great tool.
Yeah, analytical tool.
And when you watch that play out, there's this equivocation now that says the Bible isn't enough of a tool for people to overcome these things. And for those non-Christians in my audience, and there are some, you have to understand that Christianity, and I want Kris to speak to this more than anything, because he is, again, a phenomenal apologist. But Christianity, more than anything, for the Christian, has to be their primary philosophical, analytical tool. And it is possible to bring things from the world into that analytical toolbox. But what you bring into your analytical toolbox cannot run counter to the analytical tools of Scripture for a Christian. So do you see it that way as well, Kris?
Yeah, so I would argue from the framework that all truth is God's. So anything that is true, it's not true based on critical race theory, but it's based on the Christian framework. The Christian framework, it's based on God. He owns all truth. So what are we going to appeal to that is not God's truth? So anything that is true, because anything that is true of critical race theory is not true in and of itself. There, as Van Til said, there are no brute facts. There's nothing that exists that is true just because it's true outside of itself, right? God owns all truth. And so anything, because a lot of, Christian critical race theories, as they want to call themselves, I guess today, want to appeal to that. Well, God owns all truth, so we can just, well, it's not true because of this postmodern framework. And so that's what primarily I would argue to that.
Right. Are you drinking that fancy keto pop?
No, man, I am a Waterloo enthusiast.
Oh, looked like that lollipop there for a second. So I was like,
I'm a Waterloo enthusiast. Everybody on my channel knows, hey, I love me some Waterloo. Natural, 0 sugar, 0 calories. Don't get me in promotion mode, man.
Do they sponsor you yet?
No, but they should.
We need sponsors.
Yes. Sponsor us.
I'm off. I went off on a rabbit trail about sponsors. So let's talk about it from the perspective of your life. And you're 31. You're married. You have children.
No children yet.
No children. I couldn't remember if you guys had kids yet. You've recently changed careers.
Yep.
And recently moved.
Mm-hmm.
And you haven't always been where you are now.
Right. That's correct.
So your life is a life of change.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you when you were 12, 13, 14, 15? as far as not geographical location, but thought process, life.
Oh wow. A lost kid searching for identity, was not regenerated, did not know the Lord. I would say lost, and I mean that in every sense, right? Lost spiritually, lost philosophically, didn't know anything. Um, thought I knew thought I knew some things when I got in my teens, right? But
Hmm.
did not have a framework to you know to analyze life, to analyze thought processes. Just living for myself. It was it was a it was humanistic in that sense. It was just for myself.
Would you say that in those formative years, had something like critical theory really been pushed, would you have been likely to take it up?
Yeah, yeah, more than likely, just because I had no framework to reject it. I had, you know, I had no framework to deny it. I think critical race theory gives people the excuses as well. It creates victims. It creates low expectations for minorities and Black people in general. It creates oppressors. It creates oppression, just by their different redefinition of things like racism. It excuses the hatred you have in your heart as not as bad, because guess what? You're not white, so it's not really racism. It's just discrimination. And so it's a worldview for people who kind of have similar postmodern thoughts as well, and things like that. But yeah, if
So
I
it's not
was
it's really not a mistake that postmodernism, and you and I both know historically, um, etymologically, that postmodernism and the Marx social Marxist trends within the public schools, especially, it, this has been their goal the whole time, was to
yeah.
shift people's matter of thinking and mode of thinking and their way of reasoning to more of an emotive style, which then opens them up to things like embracing deconstructionism, embracing uh, uh, the changing of definitions,
Mhm.
so that when they do then bring in something like critical race theory, even though no schools are teaching it,
All right,
which
nobody's teaching it.
our friends in Owatonna here, this is the group that I had mentioned earlier. Um, they they real they realize like no one's teaching it, but everybody's learning it,
Right.
and that that softening of the mind, the coddling of the American mind. By the way, if there's anybody out there that hasn't read that book or read it, it's a very, very powerful read. People need to understand um, how coddled we've been and why that has made a lot of what's happening possible. It, it's been a very intentional attack on the thought process, not just of America, but of the Western culture in general, to completely shift it. And if you're not on guard, if you're not watching, you'll embrace it very easily. Have you seen that a lot in people that you would have run with at one time or been friends with, gone to school with?
Oh, absolutely. I remember in 2015 when I first started seeing these things. As I analyze now, at that time I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't know what the ideology was being formulated. I just knew, like, wow, this is something new. I look up, all my friends are kind of embracing this stuff, and um, yeah. If you're passive in a lot of this, it'll sweep you up, especially because we talked about it, that a lot of white people don't want to be labeled as racist. A lot of Black people don't want to be called Uncle Tom's or Coon. And so if that's kind of like your position, your you know, I guess hesitancy, you'll get caught right up in it, because your framework is based on fear. I have no problem with them calling me Uncle Tom or Coon, because I could care less what someone with the postmodern worldview thinks about me, right? I don't care if they call me an Uncle Tom or Coon. It's baseless. Matter of fact, it doesn't. Their worldview can't even account for that insult anyway, and so it's meaningless. And I would say a white person should not be concerned on the redefinition of racism. You should not be concerned about be calling a racist. You know, the redefining term racist when they call you that, because it's baseless as well. It's based on a non-Christian worldview. It's based on a worldview that's not the truth. It's a shifting. Guess what? Racism will change in 5 years in the postmodern critical race theory worldview. And so a lot of people that have bought into these don't realize that they're being used. And that's what makes it so sad with like when there's so many Christians who have bought into this theory. They're trying to Christianize it, right? I've heard what Christian grace theory or Christian redemption theory, all these trying.
No. You did not hear someone call it Christian grace theory.
Yes, I have.
I have. That's terrible.
Or kingdom race theory. I've heard that as well.
Oh boy, we will go to all sorts of lengths, won't we?
Yeah. To Christianize pagan worldviews. Christianity and paganism have no mixing.
That's not true. We celebrate Christmas and Easter and all the other Christian holidays are all because we've syncretized paganism. Haven't you read any of Hislop's stuff?
Right, absolutely, of course. And so I would say don't be concerned about the insults. The insults will come. Who cares? Let them call you a racist. Guess what? It's baseless.
All right. So let me push back on that for a second, Kris.
Okay.
That's easy for you to say. You're not the one that's being called a racist by the angry guy in the grocery store and who's making a scene.
I would tell that.
I know that that sounds horrible, but it's like, yes, you've been called Uncle Tom and House the other thing.
Right.
But that is for you take somebody like my friend Sarah who's watching and like some of my other friends and fans. They're literally some of the nicest people in the world. Well, Sarah can't be called that because she's Hispanic, so she's got proxy minority votes. But you take some of my, lily white friends who are definitely of like Northern European descent, who are the nicest, most gracious people in the world, have never treated anybody poorly, but they ask a question about something like critical race theory. And the response is, that's because you're a racist. And then people scream at him.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's embarrassing. And it's hard to overcome that fear. Because it can literally ruin you. It could take a career from you. Which of course is another conversation altogether. But how do you counsel your white friends, your brothers and sisters in Christ, your white church members? How do you counsel them to not be afraid of that? Because you're saying don't be afraid,
right?
But it's altogether different when all of a sudden they're in the heat of the moment and it's happening.
Yeah. So first of all, I would sympathize with them because that's a tendency of mankind, right? So I'm not just telling them to pull themselves by that bootstrap and just be brave, right? No, I mean, I get it, right? Human frailties exist amongst amongst us all. So I would show compassion, but I would also tell them, bro, you're not the only one being called racist. I'm being called that as well. I've been called a white supremacist. Now, some of you guys are like, wait, time out.
You got to share that tweet if you can.
Yeah, she blocked me, so I don't have like I think what started it was we were talking about the Ketanji Brown Jackson not knowing what a female was. And she came to me and was pretty much saying, I expect this from a white person, or white racist, and and I was just like,
it's not funny, but it's
I'm like, I'm not even white. And then when I told her I wasn't white, she was like, well, oh, you're an Uncle Tom and Coon. So it's like wasn't
she white?
She was, light white or light skinned or something like that. I didn't look at her profile.
Yeah.
But if you actually catch what she's saying, it's actually much worse. Because here's what she's saying: you think like a white person, even though you're black. That's what's really being said underneath the nails.
Right.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, you're black, but oh, sorry, I thought you were white because of what you said. Because we know white people think like this, and we know black people think like this.
Which is in and of itself inherently racist.
That is actually very racist.
Yeah. Like literally the worst type of racism.
I remember growing up, and my mom, she valued education. I remember being real young and making good grades in school, and one of the insults I got early on was from black people is, "Do you think you're white?" Being smart, being proper in your talk somehow was equivocated with being white. And I remember I struggled with that, and I would like not started to not care about my grades. I didn't want to be called white, right? Like I want to be
right.
black, right?
Right.
And so
their inherent idea of being black is stupid in using ebonics. I mean, it's
uneducated,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah reacted to ha ha, right? I could never be racist because I'm a minority.
Some of the most wild racism happens in the minority community.
Right, and I think that what you said just ties into what my friend Kevin's question is please explain what Coon, Oreo, I like how he spelled Oreo, Oreo cookie and Uncle Tom mean. I had no idea until a black person explained what the insult meant and how bad it was. Black on how, as I'm assuming he means as a black on black insult.
Right. Yeah, so a lot of those pejoratives are essentially meant to call that person a sellout, or you appear to be black, but you're really for the white man. That's really what they mean when they call you an Oreo. You're black on the inside, but really on the inside, you're just a white man. Which is like and crazy when you think about it. But they're calling you a sellout. You're not really for black people. So, the reason why I believe
you wrote an entire song about it.
I wrote an entire song that I released a year to this date about being black. I love being
Seriously?
black.
That was a year ago today?
That was a year ago this date.
Oh, you got to bring that up and share it. We'll play it.
Okay, I'll do that here in a second. But I feel like, I mean, the saying goes, right? You're toughest on those who you love, right? I love my family. I love my ethnic background. And yes, I have high expectations for black people because the bar has generally been set so low, right? That, if you don't have a black person in there, you got to meet this quota. I don't want black quota hires. I don't want black quota.
No, ho. Hey. You have got to go and clear that with Matt Chandler.
Yes.
And I know you get that reference.
I do, because that was one of the most insulting things I ever heard. Out of the
what was it? If we were looking for an elder and I had to choose between a white 8
and a black 7
and a black 7, I would take the black 7 over the white 8.
That's terrible.
That's coming from a Christian, ladies and gentlemen. Or excuse me, and those of you that do not identify as neither a lady or a gentleman.
That's right. We're not biologists, nor do we train to be
one. This must be someone you know. Dear woke Christian.
Oh yes. He's right on the front lines with these discussions. Make sure you subscribe to him because he definitely engages in these conversations and frustrations as me.
Well, dear woke Christian, put your channel in the comments there so people can. I'm assuming that's another brother.
That's a brother.
All right, that's another one that I go. I said that I called a black man who's a believer a brother, and I had a white person who's not a believer tell me I couldn't call the black man a brother because only black men can call each other brother. And I was funny. Like, pretty sure that in the scriptures they were calling each other brother and sister long before that became a part.
Yeah, that's insane.
They're like, that's not the same. And I'm like, It's literally exactly the same. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
my friend Travis, who's a redheaded Navy veteran, says I know plenty of uneducated white people. Well,
exactly.
you live in the South now, so
Exactly. And so I refuse to accept low expectations for one for myself and black people around me, and black people as a whole. I think the standard of low expectations has messed up a lot of yeah, black families, black black society, if you want to say black culture
yeah.
or
Thank you for
communities,
bringing. Yep. Thanks for
communities.
bringing that term in.
Yeah. Whatever you want to say about that, I think the expectations of low standards has ruined that to where you'll have a black person. Well, okay, if they get a C, they're allowed into this school, Harvard, right? But oh, you white people, you got to get A's to get in, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's lower expectations, which you can guess what? A lot of those students who get into, because we've lowered the standard, actually flunk out and now they got to go back to their homes with debt in no degree because you've lowered the expectations for them and now they're not able to keep up.
Let's talk about that black culture thing, because I mentioned that to you when I asked you about coming on, and I mentioned it obviously in the introduction. Is so? What state are you living in now?
I'm in Texas.
You're okay. So you did not leave Texas.
Right.
Okay, I thought maybe you'd moved further again. Um, so is black culture in Texas going to be different than black culture in rural Minnesota?
I would argue so.
Okay, but is there such a thing as an amorphous black culture then?
No, there's not. That's why it's different from state to state, even city to city,
Mm-hmm.
from generation to generation.
Right.
There is no monolithic black culture. You go to some place, they like East Coast rap. You go to the next place, they want R&B. So it's like I could care less as well about fitting into quote unquote black culture or this box of whatever black culture is. And guess what? You have some people who, right? The term is they get invited to the cookout, right? Because that means they fit in with black culture, so they get the invite to the cookout. For some white people, which is kind of funny when you think about it. But yeah, there is no monolithic blackness. There's no monolithic black culture. There's no monolithic white culture.
Thank you. So let me ask you this, as an uneducated white guy. Should we not see I don't want to say it that way. Isn't it almost insulting when we're told, like, well, don't lump all black people into one category, to then hear people talk about black culture, but then refer to white culture as a particular thing? Because
Yeah,
people don't understand. There are white people that don't understand that white culture is not an amorphous thing across the board,
right,
especially woke white people.
right.
They're like, oh, white culture is so racist. And I'm like,
Maybe you're just racist. That's what you start saying to him.
right,
No. Maybe you're just a racist, as what was it? Matthew Hall says. Maybe you're just racist. Start
right,
repenting for your own racism. Don't
right,
repent for me because I'm not a racist. you
right.
know.
It, and that's what I wish I could get people to understand, is that, like, there are oftentimes you and I could walk into a crowded room, and you and I would have far more in common oftentimes than I would have with a group of 10 or 15 white people who maybe look exactly like me. And God forbid that there are 10 or 15 white people that look exactly like me. But you and I would have, I'd put my arm around you and give you that brotherly hug before I would with a lot of other people. And
Right.
and that's because we share a culture, a real culture.
See, and you're getting to something that many Christians, maybe it's in ignorance. I hope it is, but many Christians are missing. They're ignoring, or they're ignorant of, and that is the gospel. It goes beyond your ethnicity, your culture, where you're from. I'll share this story because I think it demonstrates the point. When I first came to the church I was at 7-8 years ago, one of the people I spent the most time with was a 80-year-old white man. Now, okay, we're two different backgrounds. And one of the things he loved was my music. He liked Christian rap because it was so, as he described it, exegetical. It's packed with Christian theology. And we would go to evangelize together in the same ride. We go ride together, and he's playing my music, bobbing his head to the content. And I'm like, wow, look at this. Two guys, if it wasn't for the gospel, right, we would not be hanging out together, right, rejoicing over these Christian truths. But yet here we are. And that's what we should celebrate, not malign or grieve over what your ancestors may have done to my ancestors. Why is that something we elevate?
I'm like, you want to hear a funny relation to that?
What's that?
So this is gonna sound so bad, but like all of my ancestors came to North America well after slavery ended.
Whoa,
right?
Whoa! Still though, white privilege though.
But so listen. So I've had that thrown at me, and you've gotten to know me over the years. I don't normally just kind of sit back and take it. I'm always calculating. There's going to be a response. And I'm like, you know what? I do have something to apologize for. Many of my ancestors were Vikings. And so I do need to apologize for the mayhem that the Vikings wrought on North Africa when they came down and beat the crap out of everybody and then didn't take any slaves and just came back. Right. I said, so I am sorry that they probably came down and stole all your crops and stole all your cattle. But most of my ancestors had nothing to do with any of the stuff that you're talking about. So why do you lump me in? Because you would hate it if I lumped you in like that.
Yep.
Like if I have anybody to apologize to, and see now you're gonna have to tune in and hold me accountable on Monday night if you get a chance, because my English friend Pirate Tomsky is my guest on Monday night. So now I feel like I got to apologize to him for my Scandinavian and Danish ancestors ransacking all of England and just ruining everything for the. See, now I do feel bad. I do have reparations to make.
Right. Yeah.
But that's the thing, is like, it's why is it okay for any of us, especially within Christianity, and for those of you that are not Christian who are still holding on to this conversation, these types of things are really important. Why is it okay for anybody, even within Christianity, to be holding that grudge? Because that's what it is. It's a holding of a grudge. And we all hold grudges to a degree.
I've stated this. Look, I've got enough sin in my life that I'm repenting for, the Lord sanctifying me in, right? Don't add my ancestors' sin on top of that, right? Don't add someone's ancestors on top of this that they need to pay penance for or whatever they want to label this. Like, man, we got enough stuff in our lives that we're dealing with, that we're being sanctified, and the Lord is growing us, if we're in Christ. To add to that is, man, it's just another burden,
It's really what it is. And I had Kevin Yount on the other day, and we were talking about his walk away from an abusive church, and how a misunderstanding within Christianity is very dangerous to leadership within the local church. Misunderstandings of what leadership in the local church looks like has actually been a contributing factor in the complacency of Christians over the last 2 years in relation to a particular alleged thing that might have been happening, and how they all kind of bowed the knee, and whatever the state told them to do, they would do, because churches have for quite a while been teaching this idea of submission in a wrong way. And one of the things that he brought up was the legalism aspect in a lot of churches.
Right.
And what we see in churches that are embracing critical race theory is a form of legalism. You will now embrace this, or you will be questioned. Your Christianity will be questioned. Your love for your brothers and sisters, especially the minorities, will be questioned if you don't embrace this. And it is legalism. It's a damning burden.
Yeah, because it's self-admitted by many that this isn't taught in the Bible, yet it's the very analytical framework and tool by which we need to accept the Bible, which when you think about it, that's a denial of sola scriptura. It's a denial of the sufficiency of scripture. It's a denial as scripture being the highest authority, because you have something, this analytical tool is actually the framework by which we're actually to read the Bible, which is totally backwards philosophically. It's presuppositionally, when you get into things like apologetics, you learn about ultimate authorities, and if something else is how we're to view the Bible, then that's actually the ultimate authority over the Bible. And that's what's wrong with the analytical tool argument that I see.
I think I have more of your fans watching than my fans.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Glad they're here.
Berean Babes, definitely one of yours. I've never seen her on my channel, but I'm glad.
Good
I'm
sister.
glad.
Hey, I brought all the diversity, bro. So
you brought all the diversity.
We are darkening.
I have one Hispanic from my fan base watching. So Sarah, there we go. Sarah says there's a big lifestyle difference.
She's the token, right? We all need one.
Oh no! Oh no, bro!
I'm just throwing out what's been given to me. So come on.
Sarah says there's a big lifestyle difference geographically speaking for Hispanics as well. Life in Texas for me looked very different than here in Minnesota. I never gave a rip about living as popular culture dictates.
Amen.
She's not Jenny from the block.
Hey, hey, I don't know how she deal with that cold though. So that's the real issue.
I mean, it's not that bad.
Yeah, that's what people in the cold say though.
But I get
that's like me saying the heat ain't that bad in Texas.
But the thing is we get the heat.
No, y'all don't get the heat.
No, we get the heat. Oh no, bro. We get the heat. We just get a different kind of heat that you do. You get dry heat. You get dry heat. We get humid heat.
We get that repentant heat.
We get what?
That repentant heat. You start repenting for sin you ain't even committed.
No, that's what we get.
Nah, y'all don't. No, y'all don't get that.
It gets so hot up here. Our mosquitoes have to put on and humid. Our mosquitoes have to put on scuba gear to fly through the air. Travis Rojo, he says my grandfather was rescued from the Holocaust on the Kinder transport. I want my reparations.
Money coming, Creflo style.
Oh, I'm gonna try to get Travis on to talk about some of his stuff too. So you must know this guy too.
Yeah, my brother Edwin, man. Amen, brother.
Which Edwin is that?
Edwin Ramirez.
Oh yeah, I know Edwin.
Yes,
I didn't realize. I know Edwin.
See,
all of your friends, all of
my peoples, man. All of my peoples.
Yeah, tell all your peoples to subscribe to my channel then.
Yeah, go ahead and sub, y'all.
Sarah says she's representing for me.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, she's my Sarah. You're now my token. There we go.
That's right. Shout out to Sarah. But Edwin. The issue of this reparations issue is like, there are many people of color. I hate that language. We all are people of color, but we know what they're meaning. There are people of color who had slaves, but it's never argued that they need to pay reparations, So essentially what you would have to do if you want to use the reparations or slave argument is look down their family line of history and see if they own slaves. They own slaves, then they owe reparations, which would be a daunting, unending task, right? Because everybody be paying everybody, and
okay. So I'm gonna play, for lack of better terminology, I'm gonna play devil's advocate. So when you bring this kind of stuff up and you're bringing history into it, of course, it turns in. Oh yeah, you're just doing that to do the tu quoque logical fallacy. You too. I had to show off a little bit there.
Yeah.
You don't get to bring that up and say, well, yeah, but because there again, I just want all of my all of my libertarian friends know I'm still an isolationist and an anti-interventionist. But when you think about why we sent the Navy over to the coast of North Africa, it was because, by and large, was to fight against white slavery that was happening because they were taking white slaves. And now that it was a thing, what people have to understand is that Christians, regardless of their ethnicity, and I think you've heard me talk about this before, or at least write about, I hate the term race. I just hate race, but
Right.
But regardless of your ethnicity, especially for Christians, you should hate all slavery, period. And recognize that.
And that's what the critical race theory doesn't. They don't hate all slavery. They don't hate all racism. They hate white slavery, or slavery to black people. They hate white racism towards blacks. But they don't find racism disgusting. Matter of fact, a lot of stuff that have been said by a lot of critical race theory opponents, woke proponents, have been disgusting. And if a white person said it, it would send shockwaves down. I remember Jamar Tisby saying that he doesn't feel comfortable worshiping with white people.
Right after the 2016 election.
Right. And I said, if John MacArthur said that right after Obama was elected, he would have been removed from the church. Right. He would have, or canceled. Right. He would have been canceled. Right. This was before cancel culture. Right. But he would have been, bro, every podcast would have been talking about John MacArthur being a racist. But Jamar Tisby saying it, and it was kind of like, he's got a good point, I guess. And it's just like, it was tolerated because he was allowed to vent.
And the irony of that is that, like, you just the inherent ethnic hatred that's involved in that is like all of a sudden Trump gets elected and now Jamar's not safe because your white neighbor is just going to cap your butt in the middle of a worship service.
Imagine serving in ministry with Jamar Tisby being a white female, right? So you've been going to the same church for 10 years, always had great conversations, just great fellowship.
Not no more.
Yeah, and not no more.
No,
bro, I'd be looking at you sideways. You come to church like, oh, really? You don't feel safe with us now?
No, Jamar blocked me.
We're threats to you.
Yeah, Jamar blocked me.
Berean Babes. That's Mr. What is it? The associate of narrative under Ibram X. Kendi now. What's his position title?
Did that?
Yes. Wow. He works for Ibram X. Kendi. So yes.
There you go. That's all you needed to say. Berean Babes she's holding me accountable. She now is demanding reparations from my people.
That's right, Berean. We will fight for your
Berean, I need to know though. Are you asking me to pay that? Because you're going to be waiting a long time, sister.
We know you're waiting for that government check.
I have my literal neighbor, Damon, who lives like a half a block away from me, is watching.
Shout out to Damon. He
is one of my best coffee customers.
Ooh, nice.
Thanks everybody for subscribing. Yeah, she says, KDub, you can't be mentioning JMac.
Oh, I'm sorry. JMac's canceled right now, so I can't say anything good about JMac.
Is he actually JMac canceled now? What did he do now? I'm so out of the loop. Travis says, if colored people is racist and people of color is proper, do they now admit that NAACP is racist? No. Let's talk now, because we've already seen what the damage is, and thank you once again everybody that has subbed to the channel, subscribed. More than anything, if you haven't subscribed, if you're one of my fans and you're watching, go and subscribe to Kris's stuff, if for no other reason than he makes good music. And he's an excellent apologist, and he takes on some hot button issues, and I'm going to bring that up here in a minute. But the damage that things like critical race theory is causing between the ethnicities in the church and outside of the church is I don't want to say insurmountable, but it's going to be hard to overcome because I believe it has actually set back ethnic relations 50 years or more.
Yeah.
But I think it's actually causing a deeper damage in, and I'm going to use the term I hate, but in Black culture. I really do think it has in the Black community, for those that have been sucked into it deeper, I actually think it's doing far more damage, and it is far more hurtful to Blacks than it is to relationships between whites and Blacks and everyone else. Do you think that's fair? Do you think it's true?
I think that's fair and true. It's amazing to see the what relationships have done with ethnic groups over the last 5-10 years because of this kind of ideology. One thing that's amazing to see that I could have never guessed, I could have never saw coming, is the vitriol between blacks and Asians.
Mm-hmm.
There are numerous videos that go viral every day on Twitter, every week on Twitter. Black people randomly finding Asians and beating them up. You know, this is what critical race theory does, though. It creates it creates problems. Because you're a victim, you're oppressed, and right. Yeah, I mean, you can never be wrong, right? As well, because you are a victim. We know, right? If you're a victim, then you can never be wrong. You're just always a victim, and you should
Until a bigger victim comes along.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is the age where people actually want to be victims today, right? I mean, that's not just with ethnic, but with gender. This is why kind of transgender is the hot button right now, and all that's going on as well. All this is all the problems you're seeing aren't neglected because they're not disconnected from critical theory. It's because of critical theory these things are coming in. Gender studies, there's critical gender studies, and all this, ageism. All this is connected to critical theory. That I know people may not see the connection, but I would encourage you just to analyze these things. Read books. Let me see where do I have it at here? Cynical Theories by James Lindsay. Check that out because it dives into how these things are connected as well.
Well, see, there's a perfect example. Cynical Theories by James Lindsay. Here's a guy who's been launched into kind of a sub culture of Christianity because of Sovereign Nations.
Right.
Michael O'Fallon. Mm-hmm. Who saw what James was talking about and brought that awareness to the church. And he's an atheist. Mm-hmm. Now there's some distance happening, and again, James still a phenomenally intelligent man, incredibly logical, but there's some distancing there. But when you have a person who, by all rights, as an atheist, would have really kind of locked arms with that same leftist movement to destroy what people see as this amorphous conservative Christian culture of the United States, now standing side by side with people saying, no, this is dangerous, this is death, and admitting, or not admitting, but stating quite clearly to Michael O'Fallon in his series of interviews with him, along with Peter Boghossian, if I were going to pick a way to destroy the church in the United States,
right,
this is exactly what I would have done.
Right.
And now I'm sitting here warning you to not let it in.
Right. Yeah, that's quite amazing that even what shows you due to common grace that even atheists can see how destructive this is for Christianity. Like I said, they're no friends of Christianity, right? They've spoken against Christianity, and here they are saying like, yeah, if I was really just hostile to it and trying to attack it, make it my thing, yeah, I'd bring critical race theory in the church, right? And I think they're right. By God's common grace, they can even see that, and so I think that's amazing.
What is it going to take for because and I hate to say this, but quite honestly, there can't be a white rescue of this, a white battle against this where it's going to be just some incredibly smart white, guy like a Protestant version of Jordan Peterson who comes in and convinces white, black, and everybody else that critical race theory is dangerous and therefore they're going to dismiss it. It's going to have to be an organic movement rooted from within the black community. And there again, I don't know what other way to refer to it. To get that community again to see the light in Christian and non-Christian alike, and recognize the damage that it's doing. Is it going to have to be people like you, or do you think it's going to take a bigger black voice out there?
So I actually think it has to be collective. It can't just be the black community. It has to be every community that has to stand up against this, right? It's not just dependent on one community.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And so so as far as that, that's what I would say. Now, I'm kind of torn as far as to answer your question. Like, is it going to take a bigger voice? Is it going to rest on the shoulders of, many, people we will never know in history, right? And I think it's both, right? Often it is the person with the larger voice, larger platform who raises awareness. And it's the people that you may never know who are boots on the ground every day dealing with this stuff, talking about these issues with people in their community who, maybe they've never heard of the bigger name, the Vodi Balkans, but they're listening to someone who was influenced by him, and they're being infiltrated with a lot of the ideas and ideology that comes from him. And so I think it's both to that. It has to be obviously people speaking out that have a platform. They can't be fearful, but also people have to be on the ground talking to the everyday man, and so right. I think it's both.
Kelvin Jackson said, I don't know. Maybe I know Kelvin on Facebook. I don't know. Do you know Kelvin?
He looks familiar. Familiar.
Kelvin says, I don't support or subscribe to CRT, but I think the criticism of CRT goes too far, almost joking about issues that should be addressed. CRT isn't the root problem. The problem was here before CRT.
And I'll address that because there's a little truth in that.
Yep.
Yes, CRT isn't the root of the problem because there are issues prior. And I would argue CRT enlarged the problem. It made it, I think, more noticeable or more bigger than it is. And the real problem, I believe, is postmodernism. Postmodernism is rooted in CRT, or CRT is rooted in postmodernism. But postmodernism is the real trouble, which existed obviously before the 60s. Postmodernism existed long before that. And my point is, once you start saying things like there is no objective truth is subjective, morality has no there is no inherent meaning to life, there's a stumbling block, there's a domino effect to all that, and you get things like atheism, agnosticism, you get, or like a large pushing movements of that. I mean, you get CRT, you get all these ideologies that are rooted in that. And so sure, I wouldn't argue that CRT is the main issue. There's right. It's and I wouldn't say there aren't issues that need to be addressed. I think I address those issues. I want to address those issues in a serious matter, not in joking matters of things that are going on that are problematic in the quote unquote black community, the quote unquote white community, Hispanic, whatever. We can talk about those things. But I think I believe we can talk about it without a framework of CRT. maybe I'm old school, man, but I believe the Bible is sufficient to address our problems, whether it's theologically or practically. I believe the Bible is sufficient, and so I know I'm outdated myself with many professing Christians today when I just said that, and I'll never get invited to CNN with that worldview. But hey, that's my position, and I'm rooted. I'm standing on that.
You probably won't even get invited to Fox anymore if that.
Yeah, especially recently, right?
Yeah. Calvin, I would, if, in the comments, I would really like for you to. I would like for you to clarify what you were saying with CRT isn't the root problem. The problem was here before CRT. I want to make sure that I'm understanding what you mean by that.
Maybe he agrees with what I just said.
Yeah, that's what I want to make sure that we're understanding each other on there, because I don't want to blow by your answer. I also want to make it clear. I don't think there's anything funny about actual ethnic hatred.
Right.
I don't think there's anything funny about actual misogyny or any kind of other oppressive, discriminatory views, like actual discriminatory views, not discrimination in the sense of thoughtful consideration of a problem and determining what you want to come out of the situation. So I don't, but there is a place for humor when you're dealing with stuff that's just purely stupid. Right. And at times I think it's okay to mock a bad idea. There has to be room for that. But there also needs to be room for, at the same time, a deeper critical conversation about these problems. And I would echo what you said, is that this goes back further, much further in history, and it's rooted in postmodern. It's rooted in the abandoning of logic, ironically, during the Age of Reason, where everything became, there again, I don't know how the rationalism and which gave rise to an emotional reaction to everything, which is what gave us the French Revolution. It goes back that far and further, and it also goes to the inherent wickedness of the hearts of men. We're going to always look for reasons to hate one another and to justify why it's okay to hate and even kill one another and to victimize one another. And it takes someone much bigger than all of us to overcome that condition and that problem. Brian Babes points out that they actually predicted about Beth Moore and Russell Moore. By the way, they're not related. 2 years before it happened on their program Trojan Horse. I think she's referring to, is that Lindsay?
Maybe so. Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, it's you recently did some commentary on Lecrae.
Yeah.
And pointed out with I thought was a very apt observation that Lecrae is siding with Black Hebrew Israelites, calling them, for lack of better terminology, embracing them as brothers. Mm-hmm. And for those that aren't Christian, Lecrae was at one time kind of hailed as this paragon of Christian rap, how he was going to Christianize the rap culture. And he was making inroads with really awful rappers who really, and when I mean awful, not that they were bad rappers, but what they rapped about was not good. And he was starting to make inroads. He has subsequently really kind of abandoned that truthful exegetical process in his rap, and has shown that he's not really interested in Christian truth anymore. And I think that's powerfully highlighted in his embrace of Black Hebrew Israelite teachings.
Yeah, where he's willing to sit on the street, listen to them for a little while, which that's not the problematic part. The problematic part was him saying he appreciates them, while they're spewing their hatred, Lecrae saying he appreciates them. And
Mhm.
just a few months earlier, what makes it even more interesting is he actually encountered a Christian preacher who was preaching the gospel. Maybe I disagree with a few things, but nevertheless, I wouldn't interrupt because, hey, at least the gospel's going forth. Lecrae interrupted his gospel preaching to tell him how bad he was doing and he shouldn't be doing it this way or whatever. So Lecrae was more willing to hear the hateful message of the Black Hebrew Israelites than the Protestant preacher who was preaching the gospel. Maybe he had a little difference in how the style he was doing it, whatever, right? But it really just shows you how far Lecrae is going, to where he seems to be more appreciative of the Black Hebrew Israelites than the evangelical church.
So, for those of you who do not know who the Black Hebrew Israelites are, you have an option right now. Don't ever look them up, or go and watch. If they don't make you uncomfortable, no matter what your ethnicity is, you need to sit down and do some thinking, because they are a dangerous, dangerous group of people, and they are full of hate,
Right.
and they openly brag on the streets about killing and raping, killing white men and kidnapping white women and raping them and making them slaves. It's horrible. It's literally horrible. And I don't engage in whataboutism, but I'll just go back to what you said earlier about with MacArthur. If he had said what Jamar Tisby had said right after the election in 2016, any white preacher standing out on a street corner saying the things that the Black Hebrew Israelites say, he would get arrested.
Yeah,
Exactly. Not even a joke. He would be arrested. That's how bad this stuff is. And
I remember the first time I actually heard, that's why it's so bizarre to me that a lot of Christians today are saying this, because the first time I heard the redefinition of racism, of saying blacks couldn't be racist, it was from the Hebrew Israelites. Fast forward 2 years ago, and this stuff is major in the evangelical church. What happened? Because 10 years ago, nobody was saying this stuff. Now it's very popular. If you don't say this stuff, you're not Orthodox.
Right. Yeah. There are churches that are willing to consider church discipline for somebody who's not willing to repent of their whiteness. I had a newer friend on, John Delarose, has a pretty good YouTube following. He's a comic, or not a comic. He does novels and graphic novels and stuff. And he's Roman Catholic by culture, if you will, but he was attending a Presbyterian church for a while. I just want everybody to think about this: a Hispanic guy who's raised Roman Catholic is attending a Presbyterian church. I'm surprised it didn't catch on fire. But here he is, sitting there, and in the middle of the service, this Presbyterian preacher whips out white fragility and is practically weeping as he's castigating his congregation for their whiteness. And he got him walked out and never went back. And that's the kind of church that would embrace the idea that, if you don't have the appropriate measured response to this new doctrine, if you will, you could be disciplined. Which, there again, if they're going to discipline you out, you probably already left that congregation long before it happened. But this is a terrifying place, because CRT has actually become the gospel. And I don't really believe that, but that's really where we're at. It has become the new gospel message. And I'm pretty sure it was somewhere in a book that I read somewhere. It says, if anybody comes to you, even if it's an angel, preaching a gospel other than the one that I have told you here, you should reject them and consider them an anathema. It's in a book somewhere. But it has become that, and especially in the leftist progressive branches of Christianity, and it is now starting to permeate into even conservative churches, as we've seen. And there again, the SBC is such an amorphous organization. It is the largest Protestant denomination in the United States.
Yeah.
And the only other denomination in the United States larger than them is the Roman Catholics. So when the SBC is wrestling with this and not wrestling with it real well, that might change this year at their conference. We'll see, or at their convention, because there's going to be a fight for the presidency, and Vodi Bakum is accepted the nomination to be president of their preaching of some sort, president of the preaching. I can't remember what it is, but the church that I attend right now, I'm a Reformed Calvinistic Baptist going to a Presbyterian church, and we have two different Sunday school classes. One of the teaching elders is teaching through Sinclair Ferguson's The Whole Christ, and the other one, and this is the one that I've been going to, we're walking through critical race theory and talking about it and explaining it philosophically and biblically. And I've been very pleased with the conversation that's been taking place, but there's pushback during during the Sunday school class. There's pushback from people. Now it's subtle in how they're asking it, because you could tell that they want to push back more, but they realize they may not be in completely friendly territory in the sense of pushing against critical race theory. But the fact that we have to have a class dedicated to addressing this and explaining its roots and explaining why things like logic and logical fallacies combined with a historical understanding of where this comes from, the fact that we even have to do this in the church is terrifying.
Yeah, definitely. We need to equip the people, though. That's why we do things like this. So I'm very, very grateful to be a part of things like this to help people. That's what it's about, to ward them off from doctrines that do not teach what the Bible teaches and bring them closer to what the Bible does teach. So it's a positive and negative art we are engaged in.
Do you? And I know you. Well, I know today was your day off. Why am I? I don't. No, I'm keeping you on till like midnight now, bro. No, I'm kidding. I work all day. Do you see? Oh, obviously, there's always light. The light is never going to go away. But do you foresee a deeper division taking place within the visible church? Let's just say evangelicalism, Protestantism. Do you see a deeper divide coming? A darker day yet coming? Or do you think we might be on the cusp of a little bit of a shift in the Christian Overton window, where instead of swinging out to the left more, do you think it might start shifting back this way? Or do you think there's going to be a lot more damage done yet?
So my pessimistic side of me would probably go for a lot more damage before there's restoration. But I guess it just depends on how much of just continuing down this train we're going. If the train keeps going down this road and people just continually bringing unbiblical ideologies in the church, I mean, guys, embrace, or brace, because it's going to get rocky. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And that's just being a realist. That's how it always is. When the church is not at her finest, when she's embracing, flirting with unbiblical doctrines, heresies, the church suffers greatly, even those who are standing strong in it. And so we should expect that, though, count the costs and proclaim the truth in the midst of that.
So you and I both have friends that are atheists.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked to and been on shows with atheists and had atheists in interactions with atheists. and people who maybe don't know where they're at, or people who are maybe culturally Christian, but don't really know how they feel about a lot of this stuff. What can the Christian do? And I know I'm going to be having my friend Grant Van Brimmer on here in a couple of weeks, and he and I are going to tackle a couple of very key topics. One of them is, are Jesus and the gospel the answer for everything? And the Christian answer to that is, the Christianese answer to that is, yes, all I need is Jesus. All I need is the gospel. It sounds weird, I know, when I say that, like that's not true, but I'm going someplace with that, and I think Grant's going to be very well equipped for that. Not that you wouldn't have, but I felt this conversation was more important. And I'll hurry so you stop yawning. But the other one is this idea of judgmentalism. Anytime you point out someplace where Christians, this is what I find so ironic. When you point out where Christians are being hypocritical, there will always be some marginal Christian who will sweep in to point out how you're being judgmental. And
always.
And so that's what Grant and I are going to talk about. But what can a Christian like you, or maybe someone who isn't as vocal or as public as you are, or as vocal and loudmouthed as I am, what can our marginal Christian friends, our atheistic, agnostic, pagan friends, how can they lean on their Christian friend in a moment like this without the answer being, and don't get me wrong, if you're a Christian, you should be proclaiming the gospel to your lost friends or to your non-Christian friends. But how can they lean on their Christian friends in a time like this and say, how do I fight this without us going, oh, you just need Jesus, bro. You just need Jesus, bro. That's all you need. You just need Jesus. Because that's not answering their questions.
Yeah, so the Christian, right, has their eternal security, set. And so there's always going to be a confidence there. But not just in our the future, right? But in the now. I would argue that the atheists and agnostics should be leaning in on the Christian for all things. That the Christian actually has true hope, right? Notice even in my answer I gave a second ago, I'm like, things are going to get worse if this is continuing, but I'm confident that the Lord is going to destroy this ideology. When? It's totally up to Him. So I mean, obviously I would still want to preach the gospel to my atheist friend, but also just showing how, I'm just thinking apologetically, like, man, you're being inconsistent. I'm thankful you see this. I'm thankful for this. But, if you truly want to be side with me, you would have to be able to give an account for things like logic, truth, morality, all these things. That's owned by my God. And, but to be gracious and kind, what you would want to just be a good friend to your atheist, or agnostic or unbeliever, whatever they identify as religiously. You got to throw that in there. But
if reparations happen, I'm identifying as you.
That's a good way around it. I'm not sure that'll get you out of reparations, because I am a white male today. You know that, right? So I'm a white supremacist according to the the narrative. But yeah, man. So just be a good friend, man. But for the Christian, I would argue, man, I think a lot of this is for me, man, is bringing me closer to the local church and the importance of building up the body and building up disciples there, and to send them out to engage in the culture, and man, building up the local church so they can build up other people's, right, when they go out. And so that's what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, I think, here's what's so I want to, how we respond as Christians to conflict. And Christians need to understand there is a place for conflict. There is absolutely a place for conflict. Now, I'm not just talking spiritual warfare, like you know. I mean, there is a place for Christians to be engaged in conflict. Sometimes that conflict is going to be a serious and rigorous debate within the church. Sometimes that conflict is going to be serious and rigorous debate with people outside the church. But sometimes it's just going to be personality conflicts, and when the watching world sees how you respond, sometimes that's enough if you're responding the way you're supposed to. And there are going to be times where you sound like you're saying things that are pretty harsh, but love does that. Love absolutely does that. So I don't know what happened here, but I just want to share this. I don't know if you saw it, but Faith Canon 7 says, sorry, KDub, for grilling you on Psycho's video about John MacArthur and the Eileen Gray thing. I know, I think, is that the gal that wrote the really bad hit piece on MacArthur here recently?
Yeah, the Julie did. But Faith Canon, man, your apologies accepted.
I can only endorse the acceptance of your apology if you subscribe to my channel.
That's right. Subscribe then.
But totally a joke. Travis says, he says the common kingdom will only get worse. Thankfully, we have the redemptive kingdom to cling to as our hope. Travis, you're starting to sound like you're millennial there. I'd be all right with that. Power to the millennial.
That's right.
Judson is become a regular watcher, says hi. He tuned in a little late. Calvin caught back up. He said, sorry, got behind on vid and had to catch up. I wasn't speaking on you guys in general. I was speaking on the tone of critical race theory in general across this platform. I agree. More Bible is needed. Absolutely. I'm thank you for clarifying, Calvin. I think too, and here's the other thing. Kris, you're an apologist. I've practiced apologetics for quite some time now myself. The caveat to what you're saying, Calvin, and there again, it's not a caveat like you're wrong. It's the caveat is if your answer to everything is to look at the non-Christian who's struggling with these questions and to tell them, oh, you just need to read your Bible, it'll give you the answer. You're not doing apologetic work there. You have to be able to engage with this. And this is what I think scares a lot of Christians off. For one, Christians have been taught to be anti-intellectual. I know that you've addressed this and seen it. But a lot of Christianity today is anti-intellectual. It's completely emotional. And it's responding from that gut reaction of how something makes you feel. You have to be able to step back and stand on the root of all logic, but also be able to talk to people about logic and reasoning in a way that isn't embraced with Christianese and cloaked in Christianese all the time. And that, because I think that's the difference. More Bible is needed, but it's using the Bible as a filter to how you embrace these topics. I got your message. Me too. I haven't had dinner yet. Sarah says I'd argue that aren't we supposed to speak up when a brother goes astray? Absolutely, that's what love does. Yep. And the judgment begins with the household of God. Amen. And a lot of what we're seeing happen right now, I truly believe, is actually this fight is a way to bring that judgment about to cleanse many congregations. Let's see here. Travis says I am very amillennial. So I'm gonna have Berean ask a question, and we're gonna get ready to wrap up. But I want Berean Babes asked a question. That just sounds so. Hey, Berean Babe, I just like. Why do I think KDub is post mill? Well, I'll need to work on evangelizing you. Why would you want to save him from being right?
I know, man. I'll mill. I got the books if you want to read it. Berean Babes, I'll help you out. I'll help you out.
Is she post mill?
I guess she's post mill.
Oh, what if she's pre mill? What if she's dispensational?
That's good. She's probably not.
Well, I just lost all of my non-Christian viewers, and some of my Christian viewers are going, "What is all of this?" Kris, I I really appreciate your time, and I'd actually love to have you back on to talk about some more topics that are important to the church, and to get more viewers. What would be your message to the church today?
My message to the church would be to stand firm in what God has revealed to us. I think a lot of these issues have happened because we've got our eyes focused on something else. We're focused on a lot of times when you try to win the culture, the temptation is to become like the culture, to borrow from the culture, to be so much like the culture where you end up looking like the culture. But no, we're called to be separate. Like I said, I understand the temptations that's there, but I mean, it's cliche, right? But focus on Christ. What's the famous theologian? He says, 10 looks to Christ, 1 look to self, right? We examine ourselves, right? But we want to keep our eyes focused on Christ more than not. And
Yeah,
so
that sanctimonious navel gazing of the Christian who spends so much of their time on inward reflection of how horrible and rotten they are, or how good they are, leads to nothing but danger.
Right.
And to kind of to wrap it up, so to speak, because then I'll kick you, because I want to hear your thought on this, and then I'll let you go, and then I'll say goodbye to everybody.
Right.
What this argument that's taking place within the visible church is doing is actually causing everyone to take their eyes within Christianity off the cross, off the Savior, and to look at themselves for the answer, and to examine themselves in comparison to everyone else around them. So if I can just find out that if I'm white and I'm not quite as racist as the other white guy in the church, then I might be okay. But then I have to examine myself to the black guy in the church, and then realize that compared to the black guy in the church, I can't ever be as sanctified as he is, because I at some point have offended him or hurt him or done something wrong to him just by the very nature of who I am as a white person. So I need to reflect on that more. And what that does is it creates this cyclical, sickening downward spiral where nothing's ever enough. Ever. You're never going to be enough. And what the message is that if you do the right thing, eventually you can be enough, which is why I've told people, if your church is embracing this, they're embracing a different gospel, and they're also embracing a completely different religious system. Do you see that it's a rising religion within the religion of Christianity, or do you?
It's a totally different religion. It's not a it's
Right.
not like another denomination we can accept. No, this is totally contrary to the fundamentals we have in Christianity.
What does the light have to do with the darkness?
Yeah. What does
Really?
Rome have to do with Athens,
Right. Well, wait a minute now. That's not in the Bible. Hey, Kris, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Keep it up, and if there's anything I can do to encourage you, let me know.
Hey, you're doing it, man. Keep doing it. Keep doing it.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, well, you go and do whatever it was I kept you from being able to do, and we'll talk about maybe sometime having you and some of my friends and some of your friends getting together, maybe doing a round table on here sometime. I think that'd be fun to have a group conversation about the experiences, and because I think these conversations need to be had. And heaven forbid someone actually see a white old man getting along with a young black man.
That's right.
Whatever. Like,
that's right.
I'm not 70, but I will bob my head to your music.
I appreciate it, man. God bless you.
Plug your stuff one more time and then get out of here.
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube or Twitter, both Twitter or youtube.com/KDUBTRU. That's KDub True. And you can find me there, and let's connect.
Amen, man. Take care, brother. God bless.
Peace.
Get out. Hey, guys. So if you guys have an actual a question, like Kevin says, what's post versus pre-mill? You and I are going to have a sit-down conversation over coffee or something else sometime. That's a very long conversation. I do really appreciate everybody that's tuned in for this tonight. It's a conversation that was much needed, and I wanted in particular my viewers to see what it looks like, because in this, as it relates to the content of my show, the content of my channel, of my podcast, the reason that this is important is because this is all a socio-cultural fight. Everything that I have been talking about on this channel for the last 2 years, the stuff that got me canceled from my former employer, the stuff that I continue to say that continues to bring heat down on me, is incredibly important to us in a socio-cultural aspect, and it's all a part of tyranny. Because what tyrants do, what oligarchs do, is they bring in this cultural Marxism, Gramscian Marxism, Alinsky type Marxism, and they pit people against each other. And one of their arguments was, Antonio Gramsci said when he was writing from prison in Italy, when the fascists imprisoned him for being a Marxist, he said, like, we're only going to win through a cultural battle. And the way that you win a culture is you take over the institutions. And the institutions that he listed were government, schools, starting with universities, and the church. What's that look like, ladies and gentlemen? All of this stuff that's happening is an example of them taking over the institutions. And then they subjugate different cultures and pit the cultures against each other. It's vastly different and actually far more dangerous and nefarious and insipid than communistic or economic Marxism or economic communism, if you will. It's far more insipid because it appeals to a baser side. And right now, quite frankly, the people who are best equipped to fight this are Christians, and they're not fighting it the right way. They're engaging in a lot of whataboutism, and they're engaging in a lot of actually cowardly responses to this, which is why I wanted to have this conversation with Kris, because people need to see that there are strong, conservative-minded Christians within the visible church that are on the same side of this issue, who are of different ethnicities and see it for as dangerous as it actually is. We had somebody ask, have you seen enemies within the church? Yes, actually, I have. I'd also recommend the documentary By What Standard? It's a phenomenal documentary about what happened to the Southern Baptist Convention. I would also recommend the book Fault Lines by Vodi Bakum. Listen to it or pick it up and read it. It is Vodi. You will not find a better writer on this topic than Vodi. I'm going to wrap it up here. First, I'm going to just remind everybody, I have coffee, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment coffee. We're working on a couple other blends, but this is the Muhlenberg roast right now. There's a little historical lesson on the back about the importance of the Black Robe Regiment in the fight for the American independence. I've got lots of very nice merchandise that you can order. I am donating a portion of my proceeds from now until the end of the month to 22 to 0. So if you're interested in trying some coffee or wanting to get some merchandise, to if you're a fan, you want to rep. I've never said rep before for my stuff. I'm a big deal. I'm kidding. If you would like to do that to help support 22 to 0, the veteran suicide prevention group that I'm working with, I have Juan from Right America Media is kicking in up to $100 for my whatever $100. When I reach $100, he'll kick in up to that. And my friend Kim and his wife, who make my merchandise, are meeting that as well, and they do a really good job. That is, I love this mug. I have another mug. I don't know where it is right now because I was weighing it to sell it. I've got these really sharp shot glasses. For those of you who are Christian, yeah, I enjoy a beverage once in a while. You don't have to, but you can't tell me no. And we got these really nice lowball, and we're working on a couple of other options. I got sweatshirts and t-shirts. Well, it's way over there, so I can't show you right now. But make sure that you are subscribed, that you're sharing this, and that you're talking to people about this, engaging in this conversation, and that you're doing it in a place of humility and love, but confidence and with a sense of forcefulness, not in a mean spirited I'm going to get you way, but you have to stand on the courage of your convictions. If you're not willing to stand for what you believe in, then you don't believe it and you aren't convicted of it. So you might as well not say anything. So once again, for all the new viewers, thank you very much for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing if you have so far. I haven't even looked to see how much it's gone up, not because I don't care, but what's more important to me is that we're having this conversation. And maybe one of these days we'll get a group of you on and we can have a roundtable conversation like I mentioned to Kris. Check out his stuff. Kris, KDub True on Twitter and KDub True on YouTube. He's got phenomenal content. He's got phenomenal music, and he's a sharp guy, as you saw. So go and support him. And until next time, Sic Semper Tyrannis.